Hello. I wanted to do some more of these streams. I think all the technology is working. If you follow me on Facebook and you're generally used to me being quiet, I'm sorry, it's Kickstarter season, so I'm probably going to be doing it pretty noisy over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully the information will be interesting for you, so let's hope that that's the case. Just going to stall a little bit here to give folks a time to come and join us. The streaming, by the way, is happening through an app, so there's a delay. So if you post a comment, it's going to take me a little while to see it, maybe as long as like 30 seconds or longer. So it's going to be a little quick. I do need to duck out this afternoon and get some errands done. So I thought before I do that, I would meet with all you. Wanted to talk today about. Feel free, by the way, to drop comments if I didn't say that already. I wanted to talk to you today about cultures in Highcaster. Highcaster cultures are, I think, they are what make the setting the setting. You can play with the caster system not using cultures, but to play Highcaster you have to use cultures, and the reason that is because everything was wrapped up into those cultures. The whole reason for your character's being is because of the culture, and so it's important that all of the players have a shared culture. As part of the rules, you all have to sit down and decide which culture you're going to be, and you all are in that culture. You may have come to the culture later, but you're in the culture now, and that's all of your shared values, your shared language, your shared everything. Now you might be an outsider within the culture, but you're an outsider of that culture, so you have to all tie into that hub, and that culture is really what creates the setting. So Highcaster doesn't tell you how the cultures interact or what their story is with one another. It just builds out the culture and all of its details so that you can take it and put it into your Highcaster, and then what happens in your game tells the story of that culture and the cultures that it interacts with. So there are some standards that the cultures have that are important to the culture, because you can't really have a culture in isolation. Like, you have to know sort of what their geography is to understand why they developed the way that they did. So there are geographical notes within the culture, and there are political notes, sociological notes, economic notes, and all of those things are pretty defined in Highcaster. That's what defines the setting. But how the history of them, and the how they interact with other cultures, or any of the individuals in those cultures, all of that's up to you. Some of the cultures do define cities. I think most of them do. So there's like a starting place, but generally it's entirely up to you, and that's what makes Highcaster awesome, is that you can create your own Highcaster. But I do want to spend some time today talking about the cultures. The cultures you'll find are there's sort of a language. I know in all settings people make up words, but I really try to do some due diligence on language in Highcaster, where everything means something within the world. Like, I don't just have made up words. Everything's purposeful. So although the words may seem weird, there's reason behind them. And I even have, since all cultures were really rooted in the Highcaster Empire before it fell, a lot of things come back to High Speak. And so the cultures will talk about their shared High Speak language, but remember that was 500 years ago. So many of the cultures have moved on with their own languages, although some of their references might still use that old High Speak language. Now you'll see the language might look a little familiar, and it's because I didn't go all Tolkien on this, but I did do some research in etymology to make sure that the words sounded real to the English ear. So that's what we find in the language, that it's going to sound like a real word even if it's not a real word. And that's because I went to the Indo-European proto language that a lot of our languages in today's world are rooted in, and kind of pulled inspiration from there. So why don't we talk about these cultures, and I'm going to just feel free to drop any comments if you're watching. So the first culture we're going to look at is Darawish. Darawish is really a cultural hegemony. They're sort of like the Italy of the world. They have all of the arts and the philosophy, and they're all very political, and they have courts. They're pretty highly regarded, I think, by most people in Highcaster. So if you wanted to play sort of like a romance, like a Three Musketeers kind of story, if you're thinking in terms of the Frankish kingdoms or what would become France, that would be the Darawish would be really good. In fact, the name comes from is High speak, but they call themselves Forsen, which in their language means fortunate. And Darawish, if you're looking into the etymology, the legends are that they're on the Riverlands, and so that you would go and you would cleanse yourself from misfortune, and so wish is Old Forseltongue for cleanse, and Dare is for danger. So you will cleanse yourself from the dangers. So they're called the Fortunate, actually, because of that. Well, that's Darawish. The Hydoni are really the remnants of the Highcaster Empire. So these are the ones that sort of continued with the Highcaster traditions long after the Empire fell apart. So if you wanted to think more of like an imperial sort of mindset, that's my dog Angus. If you want to know more about that, if you want to play that kind of setting where you're, in regimented armies, serving an empire, then this would be your culture. This is, they call themselves an empire still, even though there's really only one city, and that's Hydon. And they are, they still use the old imperial ways, so they tend to get in the way of other cultures. And actually, in my games, they turn out they're usually the bad guys. They have a really cool region, though, because they put them on the foothills next to the impassable mountains, and that's kind of a cool location. The culture of the Rishon they're all built upon this one coastal metropolis called Rishfen, and they are merchants and merchant guilds, and they're entirely built upon that. In fact, their entire government structure is within the guild. If they are, our dog's going to have a lot of opinions. You're just going to have to grin and bear it because I can't stop them. I mean, we can't tell a dog what to do. But anyway, the Rishon will, if you commit a crime in Rishvan, you actually have to answer to your guild before you answer to any sort of authority. And the authorities are actually all the representatives of the guilds. So they do a lot of trade. In fact, they're probably one of the most commonly spotted cultural entities throughout Highcaster because they do a lot of trade. And they're always out there trading stuff. Let's see, the Saybeards, or the Seabeards, if you don't want to use the Highcaster accent. The High-speak accent would be Saybeard. They are kind of what they sound like. They are, I guess you could just call them Vikings. They come from Isolation Coast. They live off of raiding villages, essentially, and they are sort of a menace, but they do have a very strong social interior. And not all of them are marauding warriors. But that's a really cool kind of, if you want to go down the rivers and along the coast. And remember, in Highcaster, there are no stars. So they don't actually cross seas or anything. It's a coastal society. But they do go along the coasts and the rivers of Highcaster. What else? I'm going to take a break and see if anybody's commented. Not yet. So the Stairborn are an ancient society. They've been around longer than the Empire, actually. And so they are well revered by most of the Highcaster. They are kind of like the mysterious, out of the way, hard to find kind of society. They're the ones that, people go, oh, yeah, those Stairborn are so mysterious. And really, they're just an insular society, very strict religion. And they live sort of in, I almost said frontier, but really the interior of Highcaster, where they're like protected by a vast, nearly impassable forest. So that's this. They're really cool. They're kind of mystical in a way. The Witlanders. Actually going to start a campaign on Gallant Knight Games this Tuesday. I'll put more information out on the Kickstarter, and we are going to be playing Witlanders, we decided. Witlanders are pastoral, and they live in the plateau, so they're constantly on the move, and they may settle temporarily in a particular location to trade, in these sort of semi-permanent locations, but most of the year they're just traveling, and they're the Dothraki, I guess, if you want a direct reference, but really based upon like the sort of pastoral horse people that cross vast tracts of land in order to stay ahead of the seasons. So they're largely nomadic. So the Witlanders. We're gonna have a Witlanders companion. It's gonna be cool. What's interesting about the Witlanders is that the Witlands are actually the white lands because there's a lot of chalk, and so they have white chalk all over, which I think is kind of an interesting note. And then last but not least, the Wormguard. The Wormguard are they live in the mountains, and these sort of, I mentioned them before, these sort of impassable mountains called the Serpent Spine, and they are really not one people as much as they are a whole bunch of kingdoms that are constantly abiding one another. It's a very strict noble fiefdom setup, and so you call your arms when you need to fight somebody, and so people pay tribute to you, or you pay tribute to you by living on your land and taking care of it. And so it's your kind of very stereotypical feudal society, and there isn't really one group. It's just a whole bunch of them all in the mountains, always fighting. So that's the Wormguard. That's basically all of the cultures. So if you go back in here all the way to the beginning, yeah. So in essence, you take a pick of your culture. You all decide what culture you're going to be, and then you are that culture. And all your game, it sort of defines what kind of game you're going to have too, which is kind of cool. But let me know here, even if it's after the live, if you have any comments about the cultures, and if you'd like to see more of that, I can pass it on. But I think that's all I wanted to share with you today. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about heritage. So you will start getting to the kinds of creatures that you get to play, which is really cool. Looking forward to that. Hope you're all having a great weekend. And thank you so much for all of your support on the Kickstarter. We're way past our goal. We've already hit our first stretch goal. I'll be releasing the caster system to the public so that you guys can make your own game with my system, which is all very exciting. I hope you do, because I like it, and I would like to see more games built this way. So selfishly, but anyway, that's it for now. I'm going to go run those errands, so I will see you later as soon as I figure out how to turn off the stream. So long.